Hello, I'm Jade.
And I'm Winona.
And we are the Anti-Thought Ladies. Thank you, Carden and Heather, for letting us come on and speak.
It has been an absolute wonderful joy to be here.
I think Winona forgot her line.
At the Right Women's Book Festival. We're here today to talk about how
to expand your writing career and what an overall writing career can look like. So, not the New York Times bestseller one, but just, the middle one, the good one.
So we're going to talk briefly about like how to write your first page, what kind of publishing is out there and which one you might want to choose. We're also going to talk about things like writing goals. Yes, we are going to mention the New York Times bestsellers list as well as the USA Today bestsellers list. But the great part about this is, Jade, we did not just bring ourselves.
No, we brought others along with us because we do have a podcast and a show, and we asked them to come back on to share their wisdom with you. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's share our screen.
Making your writing career.
Absolutely. So let's start with this, and here we go. So when we first start our writing journey, sometimes we just dream of just being someone hearing us and reading our book. But most of the time we dream big because you know what? We're creatives and we can imagine.
Yes. So we might dream of a few of the things that are here, like my book should be a movie, or the Bentley that you're going to drive up in, the book signing in the enormous home you're going to buy after you sell your millions of books.
Millions.
That sometimes doesn't happen.
Right. So sometimes it actually equals, in reality, equals lots of money spent, small readership, and lots of time invested.
But occasionally these things do pay off. Or if with the big home and the big car. If it doesn't, we are going to talk about how to have a medium writing career and sustain it.
So we're going to talk about, as we said, staying in the middle, maybe not getting rich from your book, but actually making some profit from your book. And let us explain and why you should listen to us. We're going to go on to say why you should listen to us.
So we don't have the big Bentley or the enormous house yet.
Absolutely, but we do have a few things, which are the 25 hottest indie authors, artists, and advocate magazine. We do have our own podcast, The Women's Cave, and the Ladies Tale podcast. And we have clothing, and we were U.S. correspondents for the Chrissy B show, and we do have books.
UK TV show. Yeah, we do have books. Out of all those things,
we have books.
Oh.
Figure that, and we are pop poets. Yes. Writing.
We're going to talk a bit about writing, how we want to get started. So if you want to be writing, the first thing you have to do is face that page with the blinking cursor.
And or just if you're old school, go ahead on and with that paper and pen and or pencil.
So in the beginning, one of the few things that we have to think about, and I do mean few. So these are the two basic
We're going to be quick about all of this.
Do you want to be a pantser? So a pantser is someone who writes quickly, and they tend to have a character-driven story, or they're really good at plot twists, and they just write. And normally that first draft has a ton of plot holes and mistakes. And that's like a sad side of it, because you have to spend more time in editing than you would if you were a plotter. And Jade, you want to talk about a plotter?
Yes. What a plotter is someone that structures the story. Like a lot of times we talk to a plotters, and you could see in the background that they have all these post-its or all these like recycled back pieces of mail or whatever, and they've written out their whole story and where it should connect. And then so that means when they go to edit themselves, they will have less plot holes, but they don't really explore the story enough. So they'll have that developmental editor sometimes help them with that.
So your first page, this is an entire class.
And it is like an hour, but we are like, we're going to do it in 2 minutes. Exactly. Let's do it.
So there are exactly 4 points that we can do to do this. It's going to be a bit interactive because it's going to talk a bit about like what the story that I'm writing. So I was writing a romance story, and where did I start? I was like, ooh, let's get the story idea on the paper. So I wrote it at the top of our page. And then what's the main character's name? My main character's name, Haley Prescott. After that, what is the main character going to be doing in this situation? And I did an ultimate no.
Yes, you did.
I started at the beginning of her day getting ready for work. Jade, do you want to tell us what the second thing is I consider?
Oh, also, the second thing is the setting. So her setting is in the bedroom. What time of day is it? In the morning. What's the feeling and tone of the story? Now, let's talk about your feeling and tone of your story, right? So how do you want people to feel about the setting, right? Do they you want to feel them like they have a little bit of the heebie-jeebies? Or are they like smiling? Or are they like, oh, I wonder when this character is gonna get their first cup of coffee, or I hope they solve this problem?
Yeah, that would have been my problem in the first part of the story. When did they leave the house?
When?
And then next we're going to take we're going to take the story idea, the character information, the setting, and then we're going to go ahead and do the character. So what does the character look like? My character was a bit on the slim side, and then who does the character interact with in the scene? You do the exact same thing that you did for the first 2 steps for the character that they interact with in the scene. When you write all these paragraphs down, what I tend to do is like write them and then put spaces in between and then snip them and move them around until I have different pages. So I could start with the setting, or I could start with the character introduction, or I could start with the
or the dialogue.
Well, you're not really supposed to, but hey, go break a rule or two. Start with the dialogue. Now we're going to do our chapter check. Jay, do you want to go to the chapter check? What we should have in every chapter.
Right. Will this chapter entice readers to read more? Like, will they be like, wow, I have to know what happened? Will they turn that page? Is this chapter keeping the story moving forward? What are the key elements? Wow, I haven't had my coffee apparently.
What key elements do the readers learn? This is very important, number 2 and number 3, because if you have a page full of long exposition, a dump of information that's not necessary, no one's going to move forward. Absolutely. And it's going to be boring to read. And the last one is there too much backstory? And we want to make sure of this with each chapter, because each chapter motivates a person to keep reading. So I'm going to go through the book outline real quick. Thank you so much, Jade, for doing the chapter check.
You're welcome. Chapter check. That's me.
So the book outline is the overall story arc. So this is when you watch a 2-hour movie and the movie makes sense from beginning to end. This is the exact same thing we're doing here. We're gonna do the overall story arc, where we're gonna add our subplots, how we're gonna develop the subplots with the characters. So we might want to put our subplot being going to a plot twist that will happen in the middle of the book, but then we also have a character development arc as well. Yes. And that might come to fruition before the middle of the book or at the end of the book. After we pick our plot twists, we want to put them down, make sure that we don't have too many or too few and there are not any holes, and how each character grows due to the new situations, and finally conclude the story. Let me just say, it is so important to conclude the story correctly. I have authors out there that I love to read and hate to finish because they never conclude it like the way I wanted it done. But that's not important. If you're wondering what that means to conclude the story correctly, think of one of those favorite shows that just went off the air and everyone, I hated that ending. Yeah, you don't want them to say that about your book. And now, when you're finished writing your book,
or maybe you do.
Ooh,
or maybe you do.
What an interesting twist. Maybe you do. You finish writing the book and you want to do something with it.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the business of publishing, right?
So we have different options out here. We have traditional publishing, self-publishing, and hybrid publishing. So self-publishing is where you would put your book out into the world yourself. You would handle all the things. You would multitask. You would take care of the business side.
And you will have a steep learning curve.
Jay, traditional?
In additional, well, you have the publisher will take care of the upfront causes and cost. And because you want to have that marketing plan already getting together, and lower royalties, right? So you're not making as much, but because the publisher is handling more, and you're going to have gatekeepers and a level of rejection. Now you're going to hear from our New York Times bestseller, and she talks about she got rejected over like 100 times.
Traditional publishing, we're going to go through often.
I mean, later in the slide.
Yeah, later in the slideshow. Traditional publishing, it often requires a literary agent. And then a literary agent requires a query letter. You can meet those literary agents at conferences or through networking. For us, we meet a lot because we have a podcast. You can send those query letters also to the editors. So a lot of times you're like, oh, I want a literary agent. If it's a small press, oftentimes you can find an editor and go and talk to them directly. If you've talked to an editor at a conference, you can do the same thing. Don't forget that you also have small presses and university presses out there that are definitely willing to take a gamble on a book that is a niche book.
So this is us interviewing. Well, we had a blog interview style with a literary agent. And we're just going to let you take a moment and read it.
We ask questions like, what does a literary agent look for in a query letter? What does an agent do for their client before and after a book sale? I would like to take this moment to answer that question. They have to sell rights. They have to keep you working on your next book. They have to be an author's cheerleader. They have to be an advocate for their author while dealing with the publisher before and after the book sale.
And this is the literary agent's name is Sara Megibow. Wow, I just put those together. But yeah, so, and she really is amazing. And we had her on our podcast a few times. So
check her out, check her out on our YouTube channel, you can hear our entire list of this. Our last question was, what type of work do you look for? And how can people read more about you and your agency? And I know everyone wants to get a little more time to write this down.
Right, so let's pause here. Okay, let's talk about traditional publishing. When published by a traditional publisher, you will work with an editor, and then you will either work with the publisher, talking about your design and your PR and marketing. It depends on what publisher you get. Sometimes you're more hands-on and sometimes you're not.
One of the things that's really interesting to me is during this time, a lot of times you have to really, if you're look at the rights that you're going to have and not have. So some of these rights are audio rights, movie rights, screenplay adaptation, merchandising rights. All of these things can be taken care of by your literary agent, or you can read through your contract and look and see about these rights yourself.
So we are going to say here, as everyone always says, have someone look over your contract.
And books often take a minimum of 1 year to come out when traditionally published. Now with self-published, right, you can do anything you pretty much want. Right. But you do need to have some things to make sure you have a successful book.
And hence why we said, in parentheses, please remember. All right, you're going to need some editors. You're going to need some line editors, some copy editors, and a developmental editor.
Make sure that these editors have credentials. So many times we talk to people who got self-published, and the first thing they say is, I got an editor and they scammed me, or I got a book design person and they scammed me. Let me mention right now that there's things like Indie United out there. Yes. They have a network of people that will help you do this and legitimately, and they actually consider the cost. I like that part.
And they do, and they will legitimately help you to get your book done. There are also other editors, but please make sure you read the reviews and everything. And remember what kind of editor that you are getting, because that is important. Because if someone is just like, I can do all the editing, it depends. So there are a few people in this world that can, but a lot of editors have their niche parts, like line, copy, and development.
When you do your book cover, you can either do it by yourself, or you can use like Canva or Fiverr. You can do Canva to do it by yourself, or any other thing out there. Book Brush. There's so many other things.
There's so many. Or you can use Fiverr if you want to pay someone. Or there are some very great book designers out there. They will do a good job with your ebook and your print copy of your book.
Remember, when it comes to formatting, once again, this can be something that you can teach yourself, or it could be something that you will go ahead and pay for. We are now going to talk to a self-publishing expert that made it from self-published to the USA Today bestselling list, DC Gomez.
We're going to listen to snippets.
We indie published, and what are some of the things that we did while indie publishing? Granted, we are women's led, middle school, you name it. I put a whole bunch of fun and exciting things. I focus on my brand, not so much the genre. So with my brand is, you're going to get some quirky characters, fun, action, a whole bunch of excitement, and some crazy madness of plot. So the brand itself kind of blends. Why did you choose to self-publish? When I started out publishing, it became that question, do I want to go and query people? Do I want to go through the process of tradition? Do I want to do all these things? And I did a lot of research. I think most authors and most aspiring authors, we do lots of research. Sometimes more research than you can imagine, because we have, paralysis by research, because we don't do anything else but research. One of the things that I consider was both the pros and cons of both. For traditional publishing, there is such an awesome flexibility to have a really good publishing house taking care of everything. They're going to do, they're going to help you with marketing. They're going to do the We all judge a book by its cover. Don't lie to yourself. We do. You need to have a really good story. I didn't say a perfect story. I said a good story. Have it edited well. It's never going to be perfect. So don't aim for perfection. And if you're aiming for perfection, you're never going to publish. So let that baby go. And then you need a good blurb. That is the 3 things you need to play. Those are the starting prices. Everything else is extra. So as I started looking through it, I was like, doesn't sound that hard. How about getting me?
Or how you're going to pursue the PR for your books?
Marketing, I think, is probably the hardest part of the business that everybody has issues. Because let's be honest, every single time you truly are seeing new books come up, you're competing with thousands and thousands of books every day. That's all I concentrated. Instead of trying to jump from one thing to another. I have 15 books. So when it comes to marketing, I have to be much more strategic, or you're going to be spending a lot of money. I don't promote a lot of my first books if the series doesn't have more than 3. For the simple fact, if you have one book, yes, promote it, be proud of it. But it takes a lot longer to make money when you only have one book because you don't have a lot of that follow through.
All right, you can find out the rest of the information about DC Gomez on our YouTube channel, which we will put in the chat later. Next, we're going to keep moving on so that we can hear about other experts. For instance, we have our editor, Jennifer Graybill, who's going to talk about the trends that she currently sees.
So we're going to let
romance
Jennifer Graybill go ahead and explain a bit about trends and traditional versus self-publishing.
So let's talk about romance trends. There's a lot happening in the romance industry always. It is the genre that moves the fastest. There's always a ton of books out, and they're the ones that are going to be able to like cycle through lots of different things very quickly. So you see that the trends there moving very fast. One of the things that I'm seeing, especially right now, is a movement towards romantic comedies. And that is something that has been happening the last few months, especially since the pandemic hit. People are looking for comfort and they're looking for light. So in tropes, or whether that is in terms of authors or whether that is in terms of settings that they really enjoy. So if there's somebody that likes small towns, they're going to really gravitate towards their small town romances. If they are somebody that likes cowboys, they are going to gravitate towards cowboy romances.
Why we want to consider either, or why we wouldn't want to consider either?
Oh, sure. So the decision on what your publishing path is going to be is something that is a very personal choice. And there's a lot of reasons as to why some folks go one way and some folks go another. In the past, traditional was seen as something that was a higher level, if you will. And I don't think that's the case anymore, especially in the romance world. When I self-publish, is they recognize that they get a higher percentage of those book sales when the book is published. And that's a huge motivator, absolutely. There's a lot of reasons why someone might still want to go traditional. And absolutely. So I'm Jen Graybill. You can reach me at www.jengraybill.com or on Instagram at Jen the Editor.
So that was a little bit about why you want to go either path of self-publishing and or traditional publishing. And as we mentioned before, we only played snippets of it. So remember that you can find out everything. You can go to www.andithoughtleadies.com and it'll take you right on over to our YouTube channel and you can watch those.
Yes. Okay. So now our self-publishing options are, we have Amazon, KDP, Ingram Spark, Nook, Nook, and Lulu. And you have many, many other ones out there. We also have something called hybrid publishing, which is a little of both worlds, where you would have the traditional side because they take care of a little of the expenses on the beginning side. And then they also sell you a package sometimes so that these things that they're taking care of are paid for up front, or they're taken out of royalties in the back. We have a hybrid publishing expert to talk about this,
and Stephanie Fowler.
So we've talked a little bit about, first of all, about class does not need to know any of this. So let me get back to being
Yes, I do. I'm very fortunate for that. So, how I get started writing? I mean, when I knew I wanted to write from the time I was a very young kid. I think I started writing at like 6 years old.
Question, because I
Sure.
think you just talked about like, what traditional publishing is and now what e-publishing is. So can you tell us the difference between traditional publishing, self-publishing, and what you offer?
Sure. So the publishing industry, the traditional publishing industry, is sort of what every author dreams and wants it to be. I don't always say yes, even though I'm my company. I don't say yes to every client. Just because a client comes to me with a book, I don't always say yes, even though my company is based on the self-publishing model, which you would think, well, someone comes to you a book, why do you care what it's about? I also believe that I have to be a good fit for this client, and this client has to be a good fit for us and as a company. And so one of the things you see with the hybrid models is really sort of more of that. I don't say no to I don't say yes to everyone, but there have been clients that we have definitely said no, or we're not ready, or, whatever that might be. So there's a bit more selective in terms of how many clients they take. And then also in the hybridization model, sometimes, the publishing house assumes a little bit more of those fees up front. Some of them are deciding to take some royalties on the back end. So the hybrid market is kind of like in a little bit of flux right now.
So we've heard a lot about the hybrid market. And lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about editing. We're going to talk about editing from Diane Glasman.
Hello, everyone. So we have just discussed.
I'm both a writer and I am also a book editor. I'm a developmental book editor. My background also includes that for 2.5 years, I worked for a literary agent, and I was her submissions reader and her editor.
Literary agent. I'm sure you've read thousands of manuscripts. And what key areas did you find that are often in manuscripts that make it unattractive to an agent? Oh my word.
Unattractive or attractive.
Yeah.
First and foremost, when you're querying an agent, make sure that you are querying with the kind of thing that they represent. One really heartbreaking example of not quite getting it right was this one manuscript that came in, and that when I was reading for the literary agent, and it was wonderful. It was an amazing book. The first 50 pages were great. I recommended that that the agent request the full, and I'm reading through the full. And about 100 pages in, it became very clear that while the writer had said it was a mystery, it actually was a thriller. The agent that I was reading for didn't represent thrillers.
Of what were perfect opening pages, and then just as fast as you can. Why? I know one of the pages that you love, and I love when you explain it. Yes.
The Hunger Games.
Yes.
Yeah, the Hunger Games is a masterclass in an opening. I mean, in the first 500 words, you get an understanding of who Katniss is. You get an understanding of things that are relevant to her in the story. And Collins has this detail that Katniss's sister brought home a cat when it was a kitten, and Katniss tried to drown it because it was one extra mouth too many in order to be able to support their looks.
Well, that's wonderful. And we're so happy for you.
Okay, now we're on to marketing and PR. So in the last one, we discussed a little bit about traditional with Diane Glasman, a little bit about how to self-publish with DC Gomez, and a little bit about hybrid publishing with Stephanie Fowler.
And Jen Greenville talking about the trends in romance right now. So remember, you can watch all of those or listen to all of those. Just go to our website, www.andithoughtLadies.com, and you will be able to go right on over to it.
So marketing and PR. Quickly, we're going to run through that because everyone wants to know about this. And then after the marketing and PR section comes the writing goals, and we all need to get to that. So how do we want to get to our goals? So one of the ways we do this is by marketing. Yes. And marketing is how you're going to introduce yourself to the world. If you have a traditional publisher, this could be done for you, especially if you're way up there on the publisher's list for booksellers this year. Yeah. Like if you're an A1, you're good. But if you're not, then
you
you're
might
probably
want to
going
start
to
working on your social media right now.
exactly
To put it in line with your book. Now, in self-publishing, you're gonna have to do this marketing yourself.
So sometimes people do this by doing contests,
advertising in magazines, billboards, podcasts, Google ads, Facebook ads.
We're going to talk a bit more about the podcast and how that can play a mark. But right now, this is Jade's time to shine.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about marketing beyond your warm market.
So your warm market is normally your friends and family, like co-workers, people that you know. But expanding outside of your warm market would be talking about the people that you come in contact with day to day, and you don't think of them as your warm market, right? So cashier, do you go to the same store and you get the same cashier for the last like 4 years? Have you said good morning? You know something about them? That could be a part of your warm market. Your mail person are going to carry all of those heavy books to get to your house. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about them about what's going on and why they're carrying these heavy things. We had our own experience with that, with a cashier and with a mail person. And we literally sold a bunch of books from that. And also with bar, are you going out to the bar? Are you drinking and talking with others there and mentioning your book? Maybe not now, but when COVID is over, maybe then.
So one of the wonderful experiences that we had was with the shop with the cashier. We ended up selling it to most of the people in the store
that work there,
the employees. With the post office, it worked twice. We ended up selling to all the employees in the post office twice, 2 different post offices. Right. And the bartender actually, on average,
introduced us to people that were like, did you know that they're writers? Exactly. And then they have these books, and then all the people are just, well, where can I find out more about you? And that tends to translate into sales.
Okay, so marketing for like hosting a podcast, having a Roku channel, Clubhouse, blog, these all bring more people to your platform. More people to your platform is more people that you can introduce your book to. More people you introduce your book to, more people to purchase them. Now, my favorite one is how to get PR. Again, we do a full 1 hour and 45-minute long thing on this, but
it's so expanded. So expanded.
We're going to do this, and I'm going to do this in 5 points. How do you get PR? First of all, if you know how to write a query letter and you can write a hook for your literary agent that you've been trying to get, then you can write a pitch letter. So show how your books match societal problems. If your book has something about domestic violence, which ours did, we also talked about domestic violence. We attached ourselves to charities with domestic violence, not for publicity. We actually did it because we wanted to be helpful. Right. Did it get us publicity? Yes.
But also one of our books has something to do with cooking, right? Because it has a recipe that takes you through the book. So your kosher mystery, do you have your grandmother's famous cobbler? You might want to get on some cooking shows to talk about it. And then you can slyly put in, this is in the back of my cozy mystery.
Look for special days. For instance, if you have Halloween and you have a murder mystery, there you go. If you have Halloween and then you have urban legend, there you go.
Or is it,
if you're like us and you have a cocktail poetry book, we look for things like red wine day, chocolate day, bourbon day, because we have recipes for all of these things.
Or the changing of the seasons.
Definitely.
Right? Because if you're talking about some apple pie right now or some apple cider, now is the time to strike, because it is fall and people want to know how to make something with apples.
Or how apple pie and apple cider bring a family together. In your book could talk about how to bring their family together, which brings me to the next thing about being an expert. If you did a lot of research for your book and you're like, oh, now you can kind of sort of be an expert on this. An example of this is Tom Clancy. He did a Hunt for Red October. He actually became a consultant for the Naval Academy.
Right. So you can do it.
And then develop and maintain the relationships in that network. So if you get interviewed, don't be like, well, that was a lovely interview. Peace out, people. No, because you might want to come back and ask for another one.
So remember to send your thank you emails. Remember to follow up. Remember to be a nice person.
PR will help you to get to know others and also let others know about your books, which is kind of like obvious. That's why everybody wants PR. And then it also can leverage, you can take the pitches, you can take the podcasts or the vlogs, and you can use those to be like, hey, I now want to be on a TV show. As long as you can show that you are actually able to present yourself for a TV show, you have a higher opportunity of being on
another television show. And also remember that your PR, you can leverage that also to get better book deals.
Oh, I have a story on that, but I'm not telling it. All right now we're going to hear from our book PR expert.
About public relations. And now we're going to talk to someone who is actually does a good job with book PR.
And I have an amazing time with authors. I do a little bit of editing, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of hosting and moderating, all those things. But one of the things that I really, really enjoy is being able to help authors market and promote their books.
Wonderful. So Angela, my first question to you is, how has starting your shows, that because you have multiple ones, changed your career and literary brand?
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for asking that. It really has, I guess, broadened the horizon with it. It's also being able to reach more individuals, international
Relationships or networking is so important to the career of a writer or even as an influencer as yourself.
Okay, now you're gonna laugh if you guys know anything about me. My favorite phrase is super duper, right? So I am super duper excited that you asked me that question. I know, total book nerd of me to be excited about something like that. But again, I'm glad that you asked that because relationships are so key in anything, and especially in marketing with authors and building relationships and readerships and things of that nature.
We find out more about you, your shows, and your services.
Absolutely. You can definitely go to my website, which is Anderson Marketing. I always do that. Anderson Marketing 01 is my email address at Gmail. PM Eastern Standard Time on my Angela Anderson Presents Facebook page. And then my Angela's Literary Tea is on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday. And then, of course, I have to tell you, because it is Friday, Fun Friday is my weekly show that I co-host with some amazing authors. Vanessa Riley, who is the author of Island Queen, Pat Simmons, who is the author of Queen Surrender, who is
So this was Angela Anderson, and she has multiple shows, as you heard. She's also looking for authors to have on those shows, but you heard a quick little snippets about what.
So Angela Anderson Presents.
Yes, thank you.
.com is her.
Thank
email.
you.
I mean, it's her website.
Because every time she does it, I'll be like, no, that's the email. No, it's the website. You could. She's looking for authors to put on those shows. And also, it's a great way to learn about what your public would want to read. She also re-emphasized how important it is to develop those relationships and why you should start a podcast as a marketing tool. Writing goals, our favorite part of the slideshow.
Absolutely. So let's get started. Well, you're going to tell a story, you want income, and you want to be a known author, right?
Normally the writing goals, which goes right back to the writing dreams, right?
Right.
So let's talk about, first of all, one of the writing goals everyone has is a New York Times bestseller. In order to do that, first of all, you need to be traditionally published. If you're self-published, this is not for you. So you have to sell at least 5,000 to 10,000 copies in 1 week. And those sales have to be diverse. They cannot just be Amazon. They cannot be from just one store. They have to be from multiple places. Also, those stores have to be registered with the New York Times in order to count in the first place. This is harder to do because of the categories. We're moving on to our actual expert.
Yes. Brenda Drake.
One author. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we're going to ask her 3 questions, and that'll be just about it. So let's learn from a actual NYT bestselling author. Brenda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Brenda Drake. I write young adult fantasy novels, and I also am the founder of Pitch Wars and the Twitter pitch parties on #PitMad. Something kind of crazy. I did query for a long time, and I had I would say 200 rejections after querying a few manuscripts. I was running contests for writers. When I made the New York Times, it's harder now, more so because they have limited categories and stuff like that. But I mean, to get there, it's perseverance. It's working hard, keeping your dream in sight, and getting that publishing deal. And then it's all fate after that. You know what I mean? It's just you have to have the right publisher. They have to believe in your book, and then they have to put your book in the right shops that are going to register with New York Times, so the New York Times knows that how many books you've sold and stuff like that. So
Lastly, can you give us a website so we can stay in contact, follow you, like your stuff, and or try to do more in Pitchfork?
My website is brendadrake.com.
Okay, so now we've heard from the New York Times bestseller. Let's go ahead and do the USA Today bestselling information. Jade.
Okay, so you need a minimum of 6,000 sales in a week on the U.S. sales count, and at least 500 books has to be sold by any other retailer but Amazon. All right.
So if you're going to do this and you're going to do this with a group, you have to pick days that you specifically want to email people on. You would need, if you're going to go ahead and get that group of anthology people together, you would need like 30 co-authors. Each co-author would need about 30,000 subscribers per list. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you probably would need to have a whole class on email marketing and keeping that list. Try to launch on a Tuesday, although
try not to launch
on a Tuesday. There you
try to launch on a Monday. And then if you're going to do it by yourself, you're going to need all of those things.
All those numbers, the 600,000, the click-through rate of 2%, and only 0.5% of the sales. So you're looking at about 150,000 sales. There you go. Now we're going to talk to an expert.
Yeah. Tell you about it.
Hello.
That out to people, because when you're thinking of USA Today and you said the numbers, so you guys already know it, they're big and intimidating. So there's two ways for an indie author to get into the list. You can do it yourself, which is great. If you have the finances, you have the time, it's going to take some time, you can do it. I went with a group. And the first disclaimer I had.
Okay, I think you covered the first question already. How did you make it to the list?
Goal is to get as many pre-sales as possible. And then that week of it, you're going to work like you have never worked in your life. And all of the people in the group are committed to doing this, because the part is you cannot have all your sales at Amazon. You have to have Amazon, you need Apple, you need Kobo, you need them all to truly be an entire picture. It can't just be an Amazon bestseller. So most people kind of got that a little bit confused. We sold over 5,000 copies of this anthology. Huge. We did amazing numbers to commit, to understand, to meet the deadlines, and to be able to keep up with the schedule.
All right. And then you can have multiple
sources of income. This is how we actually did it. We went
from a books to an audiobook
to multiple genres.
To putting out stuff on merchandise. And I thought being grown-up was easy. That just screams Flask, right? And shot glass. It just screams it. Or you could do, like, we have a magazine, the And I Thought Literary Magazine, and we have the 25 Hottest Indie Authors, Artists, and Advocates magazine. And then we went and did some more merchandise and did some more designing of
we also
our
made
clothes.
a book into a game.
And a game also, and a CD.
All right, so audiobooks are a great way to make income, and they're the numbers on that. And and also the royalty amounts that you can look at.
They're a little bit higher than just selling books themselves. And let's be honest, lots of people love to listen to audiobooks. We're gonna let our audiobook narrator talk just a little bit about how to get one.
Actually, some of them already have narrators selected in their pool of artists. And so you can only choose from those groups. And it gets to be a little pricey. With those, you definitely have to pay up front. When you go through a platform such as ACX, and I just say that because that's one that's commonly used by a lot of indie authors, you have different options of royalty share, where you don't have to come up with any upfront money right away. It's just once the book sells, then everyone gets their pay from that.
So if you were looking about that, you can also look at what she just said, which is ACX. Now I'm going to run through the book to movie section, and then people, we are done. So book to movie goes like this. So first off, you start off with a book, and the first thing I do when I say to write a script, because I've done it a few times, not great scripts, but scripts that actually work, because I know this now. So first thing you want to do is you want to yank the entire thing out, and then start off with the 3 or 4 most important points, and then develop your story from there. Strip it down to the bare minimum dialogue, and then build up from there, and then learn to study the formatting of a script. Remember how to pace a script, because it's different than a book. And pacing the first act is normally the hardest, and then after that it kind of rolls with it. All
And
right,
just remember that you can definitely pay someone to write your script. Yes, it's going to be an investment,
about $6,000.
about $6,000 around. But if you feel comfortable with that, then you can do that. Also, or you can do things like go to Stage 32 or Roadmap Writers and sign up and go to some of their webinars and learn a bunch, like you learn a bunch here at the White Women's Book Festival. So thank you so much for letting us talk. I'm Jade. This is Winona, and we are your And I Thought Ladies. And you can find out everything about us on www.andithoughladies.com. Take care and have a lovely day at the festival.